Hey y'all, I am VictorÄ. I help provide insight to empower, and today I wanted to talk about trauma as it relates to presence. Now, it can play out in a lot of different ways. Some people, trauma in general tends to take us to the extremes. So, a lot of people, once they go through, especially a significant trauma, will or can go to what we're going to talk about today, which is self diminishing. So, it's a very contained, very withdrawn form of expression, whereas others will tend to play it out and it can manifest or materialize in a very extroverted way. But today, it's about the withdrawn aspect or response of and to trauma. So today we're going to talk about uh, speech and physicality as it pertains to being a withdrawn person. So, if you've been through some pretty deep things, or maybe not so deep things, but felt that disconnection from safety, there can be a tendency to withdraw. It's normal, it's completely appropriate, but that's going to impede and obstruct our ability to be fully present. And when we're not fully present, that's when we're filling the space with our own expectations, our mental emotional charge expectations, and beliefs. So if I believe that the world is an unsafe place, or that people don't have my back or don't support me in the things that I want to do, well, that can play out in people pleasing, in isolating, in a lot of different ways that are no bueno. Uh, and one of the biggest things that we're going to hit on today is speech, self-diminishing speech, in the form of do you ever catch yourself saying things like "I guess" or "kind of" or "a little bit" or especially "just"? Well, this can be one of those responses, one of those learned behaviors to the traumatic experiences that we went through early on. Space, mental, emotional space. We're gonna talk about how that plays out more, and then taking up space physically and emotionally, and especially if you go to therapy or if you book a session with me, um, what addressing these things in a therapeutic setting can do for you, and what it ultimately maybe won't do for you, or maybe one of those expectations that we were talking about. Um, so where to start? I have one, two, three. There's two things to notice. Um, am I making up the person's mind for them? Um, so being in a disempowered state of mind and emotion is, it can be like a mold that we put ourselves into, and people don't know that. Now, on the one hand, especially with physicality, if my shoulders are drooped forward, if I'm kind of like down, if I walk around like this, head down, not really making eye contact, this is informing a person unconsciously about how we carry ourselves, what we believe about ourselves, and we're kind of making up the other person's mind for them. And by this, I mean by informing them that we're someone who has yet to develop healthy self-esteem, we may unconsciously be giving them the message that it's okay to use us as a doormat. One of my biggest revelations or insights that I came across recently was in feeling or playing out the belief that I needed to be used or like taken advantage of. But being used, especially, was one that played out with relationships where I would unconsciously gravitate towards women who were just out of relationships. So they just wanted to, somebody to hook up with, not really somebody to take seriously or go, the distance with. And I didn't realize, kind of hit me like a ton of bricks, was that if someone uses me, that implies that I have something to offer. Or if people are always taking from me, why I keep fulfilling that, or why I keep what I get from that is the unconscious belief that I have something to offer. Or there's, if somebody takes from me, well, then I must have something to take. And so kind of like, if I'm throwing myself into the bus in that way, one, I have to own that I'm setting myself up through my physicality and voice, that I'm setting myself up to be taken advantage of or to be used. Definitely not the healthiest and or most sustainable way to go about relationships, speaking only from experience. And I like that I numbered these together. Am I making up the other person's mind for them? When I say things like I guess or just or kind of or a little, I feel a little anxious. I just wanted things to go a certain way. Especially ending sentences with yeah or with yeah, I'm kind of in my speech I'm expressing and communicating that I'm uncertain. And as much as that does tend to inform another and in an unconscious way tends to influence how they're going to respond to us, whether or not they're going to take us seriously, it's really about communication and relationship to self, first and foremost. So if I'm using that language, one, I picked that up from somewhere, and two, I'm perpetuating that. If I'm still using these phrases and words, then I'm still in the practice of self-diminishing. And it can be a little bit of work to, really not that much, but just to catch oneself, just to catch myself and notice like, oh yeah, I was about to use just, or if you're the person, if you're the kind of person to use like a lot, it's simply a matter of becoming aware in the moment, kind of playing a game with yourself while you're communicating with others, of becoming aware, using these transforming these words and phrases into prompts. So if I have the prompt of, in my mind, highlighting these words and phrases to trigger me into self-awareness, not self-consciousness, but self-awareness, then one, I'm becoming a lot more present, which is helping me overcome the traumatized perspective. Because, and this is pretty key here for me anyway, or what was key for me was that when I come from that still traumatized perspective, I'm operating under the belief that it is dangerous risky, unsafe to be present, because when I was present is when the experiences happened. So it can deteriorate, and ultimately discourage the need, the desire, the joy of being present in this world. It tends to have us fixated on what is wrong with it, as opposed to the good that we can add to it. So yeah, using these words and phrases, and maybe you notice other ones, I guess, just I kind of feel tired, versus, that sounds different from I'm burning out. I could stand to prioritize some rest. Yeah. And I'm a little anxious, versus I'm feeling some anxiety. That owning that, right? This is all about owning our language and space. Using these words it is passing off the buck. It's not, it's not owning our own wants and needs. And when we don't do that, whatever you want to call it, the unconscious, the inner child, starts to build resentment. And we don't know that we're carrying that against ourselves and then taking it out on others. But when we own that, when we own our language, well, suddenly we're more decisive. We're a little more present and aware. It's maybe riskier to be so decisive or to be so bold when you've learned not to be, when you've learned to diminish yourself, diminish your wants and your needs. So things to notice: physicality and speech, or voice and behavior. So by these, I mean physicality. What I touched on before is how I am occupying my body and how I am carrying myself through the day and within my relationships. I've noticed personally that my voice tends to diminish the most when I'm around first my parents, my dad, and in situations or places where it behooves me to be on the authority's good side. Or if there's any sense of unsafety. So anything regarding money or nourishment or what do you call it? Your dwelling, living space, or I'm thinking of like getting a hotel room or staying over someone else's house. How are we speaking to the owners of these establishments or homes? Speech here, different from voice, is word choice. Again, tying back to one, what kind of language are you using? Are we using? And are we mumbling? Are we speaking clearly? Are we enunciating? Are we speaking from the diaphragm with diaphragmatic support? And then behavior is different from physicality, because for behavior, this is more specific to, the word that comes to mind is our programs. So not so much how we're occupying our body, but now how that's playing out. Right? I just gestured with my hands, but if I'm in a less sure presence or state of mind or physicality, I've noticed, especially right here, tends to, if I exaggerate it, I tend to cave it in. Huh. So from the physicality that we're in, be it present, bold, or withdrawn and unsure, that is going to then inform our behavior. Yeah, I'll touch on that more. But for now, stretching to grow and expand our presence. So one of the biggest things that really fucked me up in beginning to do this kind of this work in self-awareness and consciousness was feeling like I had to be there already. So for my day job, I do refrigeration, and I just graduated at the time of this video about a week ago, and now I'm in a new position in life and in work where for me, because of the way I grew up, because of the experiences that I went through, the pressure is on from me to me, not from, you know, my supervisors and my trainers are all, they understand that I'm not going to get this right away, but there's still that nervous inner child within me that says, I need to learn this. I need to have, I need to be the best already. I need to be perfect already. So when we then start to transition, right, we're transitioning into a space of patience and pace, right? One of my favorite things that came to me a few months ago was inner pace equals inner peace. Inner pace equals inner peace. When I have integrity to my own inner pace, not that of the world, when I have integrity to that inner pace, I can relax a lot more. I can let myself make mistakes and speak a little clearer, take a little more time with my words, with my movements. I can be a lot more deliberate. And one, sure of myself, and two, when I'm in that mode of having integrity to my inner pace and being sure of myself, well, then other people pick up on that and they start to reflect that back to me. And now that becomes the new expectation, where before it was self-diminishment and withdrawing and isolating and not wanting to cultivate relationships. It is so necessary, especially for anybody who's been through, you know, their own traumas, to learn the importance of relationships. If you've ever heard the phrase mirror neurons, you know the importance of, maybe you have your foot in the door, of knowing the importance other people play in our lives. What people, I mean, not even what people, again, self first and foremost. What happens when we communicate things to people and how we interpret their interpretation of us? So if I'm practicing this, if I'm in the practice now of letting go of these words, of now letting there be space instead of using filler words, now I'm stretching. I'm growing and expanding my presence. I'm taking up more space where before there was that belief that I should be as small and silent as possible. So it's not about being there right fucking now. It's about taking it one step at a time. Kind of cliche, but it stands. Right? We're not going to get anywhere by rushing ourselves. And if there are people in our lives who are used to us being a certain way and are used to, maybe that's where we learned it from those relationships with the people rushing us. Now we're rushing ourselves for them. If they can't have the patience to make space for us, if they can't make space for us, if they can't, give us a second or two to come to the world from, that good place within, they are letting us know, they're communicating to us, hey, I don't have the patience for that. Which is to say, hey, I may or may not have a place in your life right now. I'm used to treating you a certain way. And it seems like you're transitioning into a better place. So you may have to reevaluate or communicate some things within our relationship. We may have to reevaluate this dynamic. And that can be scary. One of the most frightening things for any person, because we're coming from such a tribal nature, is the fear of losing our place within our tribe. In Australia, there's this phenomenon or unconscious act that they call tall poppy syndrome, where if there's a person who stands out, they tend to cut them down, cut them down to size. Which is to say, if you're feeling really good about yourself and you're standing out, the tribe kind of perceives that as a no-no, as kind of a threat. Especially if you've played a role within the tribe for so long, and now you're saying, well, now it's time for me to advance, it's time for me to grow. If that tribe or people within that tribe want to cut you down, not the whole tribe is going to cut you down. You're going to find out who your real friends are. But if the tribe tries to cut you down, that's when you take a step back. You don't diminish yourself. We say, okay, I may. And this is one of the hardest things I had to learn was, it's not about burning the bridge right away. It's like taking a step back, keeping oneself in the practice of growing, of expanding. And maybe that's uncomfortable for the person right now. My cat. Maybe that's uncomfortable for the person right now, but maybe we can link up later. Maybe my absence will make both of our hearts grow stronger, and we can meet up, down the line, down the road. And last, we have owning our language and space, which is to say you versus I, which is something that I've been very self-conscious of throughout this video. May not even have noticed. But depersonalizing with you versus owning our language and space with I. So there tends to be a pattern in speech of, again, displacing ownership, really not fully owning our own opinions and beliefs. Which is to say, when someone starts to say something like, when you are having that, let's say, for example, when you're having that kind of day and you just want to do this thing that's maybe very specific to me. You want to, take a bike ride. You know how you want to take a bike ride when you're really stressed out and the person who's listening is like, yeah, no, I just want to sit on my couch and binge watch whatever the fuck. When we start to shift away and really shift towards self-ownership and owning our language, there's no more escaping or what's that? This it's kind of scapegoatist language. to use you, or you know, or things like that. It's more about communicating one's experience while also allowing the space for another person to share their experience. So I'm struggling to think of an example at this time. Whereas before I might have said, you know how you struggle to think of an example when you're put on the spot? It's a subtle shift, but I'm wondering if simply planting this seed now will deliver the message. There's definitely some weight and a little more, should have written it down, a little more that I could say on this, but I'm struggling to find the words or like a really succinct example right now. Maybe for now, something that you can take away and practice is simply noticing when you're using I, or when you're using you. Yeah, I have to leave it there. Leave it with me. I'll save it for another video. More on owning our language and space and you versus I language. But that's it for now. I'm pretty tired. Full day. All right. Peace. Love you.